Namaste Priya Mitrani and Punarapi Swagatam. So we've been looking at these different verb forms. Etani bhinna dhatu rupani vayam militva pashyamaha. Tatra cha tesham punaha abhyasena yushmakam Sanskrite atmavishwasah dridhaha abhavishyat iti mama purna vishwasaha asti. So we've been looking at these different verb forms, and with a more detailed and regular practice, I'm confident that that your own that your comfort and self-confidence with this language would also have increased significantly. So let's move on. This is going to be lecture number 31, which is an introduction of the conjugation of the verb shru, to hear, from the Swadigana or the fifth group, and we look at it in the various tenses and moods. So today's class will be about an introduction to this Swadigana, the fifth group of verbs in the Vartamana Kala, Bhavishya Kala, Ajna, Anadyatana Bhuta Kala, Kriyatipatil ring and the Vidhiling. And the practice will be mainly around the verb shru, but I'll also give you some practice with the verb shak, to be able to shaknoti, because this is a very important verb in our daily conversation. Tari sambhashane etasya dhatoho bahu prayojanam bhavati. Tari, with this also look at building your vocabulary. So let's look at the Vartamana Kala first and the Bhavishya Kala. So Shrunoti, do you remember the forms? Let's see if you can recollect. Saha Shrunoti, Tau Shrunutaha, Te Shrunvanti, Tvam Shrunoshi, Yuvam Shrunuthaha, Yuyam Shrunutha, Aham Shrunomi, Avam Shrunuvaha or Avam Shrunvaha, Vayam Shrunmaha or Shrunumaha. Uttamam. So moving on to the table itself, you have Shrunoti, Shrunutaha, Shrunvanti, Shrunoshi, Shrunuthaha, Shrunutha, Shrunomi, Shrunuvaha and Shrunvaha. Dvayam api sambhavam asti, both are possible, and Shrunumaha or Shrunmaha. Kadachit sandeha api bhavitum shaknoti. So sometimes it's quite possible that you have a doubt in your mind, but don't worry. Etat bahunam bhavati, bahu varshani sanskritam adhitya api etadrisha doshaha bhavitum shaknuvanti. Astu. So even after many years of practice, one is still likely to make these errors. So don't worry about messing up in these forms. Only thing is that gradually you will become more familiar with them, and they will come out correctly, more spontaneously. Astu. Bhavishya kale kim bhavati? Shroshyati, and moment you have that, you have all the rest of it. Astu, let's do it together once, and we'll do it a little fast. Shroshyati, Shroshyataha, Shrosyanti, Shroshyasi, Shroshyathaha, Shroshyatha, Shroshyami, Shrosyavaha, Shrosyamaha. One more try, and this time in one breath. So take a deep breath and see if you can say it in one breath. Let's try that. Shroshyati, Shrosyataha, Shrosyanti, Shrosyasi, Shrosyathaha, Shrosyatha, Shrosyami, Shrosyavaha, Shrosyamaha. I can guarantee to you that if you're doing it this way, you're doing many things also at the level of your breath, and it's a great pranayamic exercise as well. Astu. So just to mention here that we are looking at the Swadigana, and the Swadigana gets its name from the verb su, and su means to press out, really. It has the same root of the word soma, and Sri Aurobindo says that soma, while there is a debate about what is the plant that is intoxicating, that has this intoxicating juice, Sri Aurobindo, who gives a psycho-spiritual interpretation of the text, says that each of these words is symbolic of a deeper psychological experience, and soma, coming from the root su, represents that essence, that essential delight of existence that needs to be pressed out and experienced in every activity that we do, and it is that soma that the divine forces drink and enjoy. So su, small verb but great significance even at the Vedic level. So sunoti is what gets added there. So su gets the no, it's like shru gets shrunoti, su sunoti. So you can identify this no as being a characteristic of the Swadiganaha. And in the Bhavishya Kale kim bhavati? Soshyati, uttamam, and then Soshyataha tat chalati eva. Next verb, up. So up, apnoti and bhavishyakale apsyati. Uttamam. And apnoti anyadapi anyah dhatuhu asti. There's another verb that you know which uses the same root but which has a prefix. Yes, prapnoti. So to get. So prapnoti and prapsyati, will get. And many words around that. Praptihi, something which you have got. Praptavyam, that which you need to get, etc. etc. Next, shak. Shak, shaknoti and shakshyati. Uttamam. Chi. Chinoti, to choose. So chi means to choose. And then bhavishyakale cheshyati. So if you want to say you two will choose those two books, vadatu, you two, yuvam, will choose cheshyatha, those two books, te pustake. So yuvam te pustake cheshyatha. Uttamam. Let's move on. So let's do a practice with the ajna, the anadyatana bhuta and the kriyati pattil ring. So shrunotu becomes shrinoti becomes shrinotu or shrinutat. So this shrinutat is something that we have been encountering for the verbs in our previous groups as well. So it's a convenient alternative to remember because it seems to take the same form across the different groups of verbs. Next, so shrinotu gets shrinutam, so tam tam ta, and shrinvantu. So shrinotu, shrinvantu. Do you have another verb in your ear which is similar to that? Karotu, kurvantu. So we see that karotu doesn't belong to this doesn't belong to this group, but it does share certain features in common. Okay, we'll be looking at karoti also shortly. So the next one is shrinu. So tvam shrinu. Next, or shrinutat, then shrinutam and shrinuta. Uttamam. Aham shrinavani, avam shrinavav, and vayam shrinavama. Uttamam. So if I wanted to tell you, let's listen to Sanskrit well, how would you say that? Let's listen. Let us all listen to Sanskrit well. So, vayam sanskritam samyak shrinavav. Uttamam. Sorry, shrinavama. So we plural. So can we say that again? Vayam sanskritam samyak shrinavama. Uttamam. Let's move on to the bhutakala and see what happens there. So we have shrinotu becomes ashrinot. And then the next one. So shrinotu becomes ashrinot. So no there. But the next one has u. So shrinutam becomes ashrinutam. And then so shrinvantu becomes ashrinvan. Uttamam. Then shrinoho, ashrinoho, ashrinutam, ashrinuta. Anantaram ashrinvam, ashrinavam, ashrinuva and ashrinva. Finally ashrinuma or ashrinma. So as you can see that bahu saralam nasti, it's not very easy, but the only way out is to have a regular practice of the verbs, verb conjugations. Adhika abhyasena saralataram bhavishyati, it will get easier, saralataram. And I just would like to point out here that there is a lot of na in this. That na phonetically is a very not phonetically or physiologically is an important point, the cerebral, because it activates the different energy centers in the body, the two main energy meridians as per Chinese medicine. So here you have a lot of opportunity to get your tongue into position to do that shrinuvam, shrinoti, shrinutam, shrinvan. So make sure that you are being able to roll your tongue up to the cerebral point, and that will also increase the flexibility of your tongue and its muscles. Astu. And what happens in the for the table here, we have su becomes sunotu and asunot, and in the kriyati patil ring asoshyat. So soshyati becomes asoshyat. Uttamam. Ap becomes apnotu, apnot, and so apsyati will become apsyat. Now what happens there is the A remains A because A plus A still is an A. So apnot and apsyat together becomes apsyat. So apnot and apsyati, combine that and becomes apsyat. Uttamam. Shaknoti. So shaknot, shaknotu, ashaknot and ashakshat. Uttamam. Chinotu, achinot. What's the future of chinoti? Cheshyati. So combining it with the past tense, acheshyat. Uttamam. So if you want to say, if there was time, then he would have chosen well. If there was time, he would have chosen well. Yadi samayah abhavishyat, tarhi saha samyak acheshyat. Uttamam. Let's look at the bhutakala and the vidhiling. So ashrinot becomes shrunuyat. So we've been looking at this yat as an agama, as a sound that enters. So dadati, adadat had become dadyat, asti become syat, okay, or astu became syat. So this ya seems to be a very common addition in order to make the vidhiling for these verb groups. So shrunutam, shrunuyatam, ashrinvan. So ashrinutam becomes shrunuyatam, ashrinvan, shrunuyuhu. So this is always different, as we've noticed earlier also. So ashrinoho becomes shrunuyaha, ashrinutam, shrunuyatam, ashrinuta, shrunuyata. Finally ashrinvam, ashrinavam, not shrinvam, ashrinavam, shrinuyam, ashrinuva or ashrinva becomes shrinuyava, and ashrinuma or ashrinma becomes shrinuyama. Let's just try and do the vidhiling alone. Shrinuyat, shrinuyatam, shrinuyuhu, shrinuyaha, shrinuyatam, shrinuyatam, shrinuyata, shrinuyam, shrinuyava and shrinuyama. Uttamam. Let's move on. So here I've tried to put the verb shaknoti for us to do a practice with another verb. So we have ashaknot becomes shaknuyat, ashaknutam, ashaknutam, shaknuyatam, shaknuvan, shaknuyuhu. So like we said, this is always a bit different. Ashaknoho, shaknuyaha, ashaknutam, shaknuyatam, ashaknuta, shaknuyata. Uttamam. Ashaknuvam, shaknuyam. That is also a little different here. Then ashaknuva becomes shaknuyava and ashaknuma, shaknuyama. And here we have a table here. I'd like you to make some sentences there. So if you say samayah bhavet, yada, yatha samaya. So yatha and tatha means as much, thus. So as and thus. So yatha samayah bhavet, just as much as you have time. Tatha kriditum, he has time. So as much time as he has, tatha kriditum shaknuyat. So he will play according to the time he has. Yatha samayah bhavet, as much time as he has, tatha gantum shaknuyat, that he will be able to go accordingly. Then karyam samapnuyat, yatha karyam samapnuyat. So as and when he will finish his work, tatha vishramam kartum shaknuyat, he will be able to rest. Next, yatha karyam samapnuyat, tatha vishramam kuryat, he may rest accordingly. Yatha samyak pathet, as much as he can study well, tatha lekhitum shaknuyat, will be able to write accordingly. So this would be very relevant for the Samskrita Pariksha also. Astu. But no tensions about it. Just regular practice will keep you in a very, very good position to answer it with great ease. Astu, let's do a conversation on this. Namaste Piyusha.
Namaste Arye.
Aham ashrunavam yad bhavan pratidinam pratah utthaya gitani shrunoti iti.
अहम प्रतिदिनं प्रातः 1 घण्टां यावत् निश्चयेन सङ्गीतं शृणोमि।
तेन त्वं किं प्राप्नोषि?
सङ्गीतश्रवणेन सङ्गीतश्रवणेन अहम् अतीव आनन्दं प्राप्नोमि।
उत्तमम्। And त्वं कीदृशगीतानाम् अथवा त्वं कीदृशगीतानि चिनोषि सामान्यतया?
सामान्यतया अहं विविधप्रकारकसङ्गीतानि शृणोमि, परन्तु तेषां मध्ये बहूनि संस्कृतसङ्गीतानि सन्ति।
उत्तमं। त्वं किं तेषां गीतानाम् अर्थम् अवगन्तुं शक्नोषि?
आम्, पूर्वे अहम् अशक्नुवं, परन्तु
न अशक्नुवं।
न क्षम्यतां, पूर्वे अहं न अशक्नुवम्।
आम्।
इदानीं श्रुत्वा इतोपि अवगन्तुं शक्नोमि।
अस्तु, मम एक अनुरोधः, एक रिक्वेस्ट् अस्ति।
वदतु कृपया।
त्वं किं तानि गीतानि मह्यं दातुं शक्ष्यसि?
आम्, अवश्यम्, अहं श्वः दास्यामि।
उत्तमं। यदि अहं तानि गीतानि पूर्वम् अप्राप्स्यम्, अहम् अवश्यम् एव अश्रोष्यं, किन्तु यथा वयं जानीमः यद् भवति हिताय एव भवति। So, I found this verse from the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, which is a great text on Kashmiri Shaivism, and it's a dialogue between Shiva and Parvati, where Parvati is wanting to understand the secrets of the deep being and eternal bliss, and Shiva then tells 112 techniques of meditation, which has been commented upon by various scholars, including Osho, Swami Lakshman Jhu, etc. So this particular says, Pinam cha durbalam shaktim dhyatva dwadasha gochare pravishya hridaye dhyayan muktaha swatantriyamapnuyat. So let's analyze that. Pinam cha. So Pinam is gross and thick. Durbalam shaktim dhyatva. So Pinam cha durbalam shaktim. So the breath, force of breath is weak and thick. Dhyatva dwadasha gochare. So you have to meditate on the dwadasha gochara, which is said to be near your Brahmarandhra. It's a point there and 12 fingers above that. It's at that point. If you meditate there, pravishya hridaye dhyayan, or you can enter into the heart and meditate there. Muktaha swatantriyam apnuyat. So the liberated man, the person, will be free and will be independent. So if prana shakti, which is gross and thick, is made frail and subtle by yogic discipline, particularly pranayama, and if a yogi meditates on such shakti either in dwadashanta or in the heart, the center of the body, by entering mentally into it, he is liberated and he gains his sovereign, natural and sovereign power. So this is a particular quotation by Swami Lakshmanju, who was known as Lal Sahib, or friend of God. He was a great mystic and scholar of Kashmiri Shaivism in very recent decades. So he says that Abhinava Gupta, the great Shaiva master of the 10th century, explains that when Lord Shiva is completely alone, bereft of his creation, he exists in the full splendor of his God consciousness. He does not need to recognize his own nature because it is already there, but he wants his own nature to be recognized. This recognition gives him great joy, but because it is already there, there is nothing to recognize. So in order to recognize his nature, Shiva must become ignorant of his nature. He must seemingly separate himself from his nature. It is only then that he can experience the joy of recognizing it. So these are the mysteries that underlie our creation, and why there is such a disparity between so many things, and yet we are told again and again that deep within everything there is this eternal bliss of Shiva, the Brahman, whatever you call it. And so just wanted to share with you that a good knowledge of Sanskrit can give you access to a lot of the spiritual texts, of course, but different kinds of yogic texts, scientific texts. Ataha samyak sanskritam pathantu. Few references for you there. So based on what we've done thus far, Atma Jnanam Astute. Atma Jnanam, knowledge of the self. So Atma Jnanam Astu Te. Atma Jnanam or Jnanam Astute. May you have self-knowledge, or may we all have, but here I'm addressing it to you, but it's something that is greatly required for us to lead more sane, more healthier and happier lives. Dhanyavadaha.